My name is Russ. My wife's name is Susan. I can't even begin to understand why she wanted to do what she did. I still look at her and wonder what I'm missing for her to do such a thing. I know it's me. I was missing something if she wanted it. Just a few days ago, I watched 24 years of what I thought was a wonderful marriage walk out the door with little more than a week's notice, and damn it, without any warning. What can a man say when his wife asks for a vacation, and not just for a day, and for a week or maybe? To explain what she asked. Vacation is essentially a free card for treason. Your husband tells you that you can act if you have sexual attractions to other people. If you had sex or other romantic encounters with someone else, your husband has no right to be angry about it. Just in case anyone doesn't know what a vacation is, I asked her which idiot I was going to beat up for courting my wife behind my back. She assured me that no one had touched her yet and that she had no desire for anyone in particular. We argued about it for almost 4 days before she told me that her best friend and coworker had gotten divorced and Katie had started going out on weekends to pick up men. She brought them home and had sex with most of them. She told my wife Susan about it, and now Susan is horny at the thought of sex with random strangers. The first few times she brought it up, I was so shocked that I started screaming. I asked her how many men she had slept with without my knowledge. She said none. But I began to doubt this answer. Susan is a second-grade teacher. She must be respected and led by example. Summer was coming, and she wanted to start bringing strange men home to have sex with them in the guest room, assuring me that she would never do it in our bed. For several days I walked around in a fog, knowing that her request was killing me. I didn't tell anyone about her madness. I hid it very well, and I must say I even shed a few tears. She became more and more demanding, letting me know that she wanted to do this during spring break. I challenged her several times, asking why she wanted to cheat on me. I couldn't believe her answers every time. It's not treason if I have your consent. Over and over again, the same thing. She went crazy. Then she started with the argument. When I start having sex with other men, I can take home what they teach me and make our sex life even better. When that didn't work, she tried the "I won't stop making love to you" card. I will have sex with you anytime you want, as long as I have a vacation. Then she tried, "If you love me, you will let me do this." I replied, "If you love me, you wouldn't do that or even ask." That didn't work either. Then she tried to cut me off and leave me with nothing, bribing me with sex to allow it. No, I didn't give in. Then she became overly sexual and gave me what I craved. I gave in, but I had conditions. I told her that she cannot bring any man near me, and especially not into our house. She didn't like it and started arguing, but I told her that she could take her things to Katie's house and have sex with her there. She does have a spare room, doesn't she? She knew that I would not bend to this, so she agreed. Then she hugged me and said that I made her the happiest woman in the world. I didn't tell her that the price was too high. She danced around the house for several days, preparing for her vacation. I mostly avoided her. Seeing her so happy, knowing that I was not the person she wanted, almost killed me. I started getting very depressed and hiding from her and everyone else. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone knowing what was happening to me. I thought that they would think that I was not man enough to take care of my wife, and unfortunately, they would be right. I remember coming home late one Monday evening and finding her already packed, with her suitcases in the car. She tried to kiss me, but I refused, telling her, "Please don't do this. Do not do that. You know this will only ruin our relationship." She just rationalized what she was doing and said, "No, honey, just a few weeks, or at the most, a month." From just a few days to a month, I asked. "I'll definitely be home by the end of the summer." She made sure I understood. It was 3 months. I won't be here by then. But I didn't tell her that. When she walked out the door without a kiss, I refused to give her this satisfaction. I guess I was mostly worried if someone I knew had her in bed. I felt such a fool. I sat in our living room, stunned by what had happened. I had some preparations. I hired a private investigator to follow her. I had to know and have proof that she was actually doing what she said she would do. A few hours after she left, a locksmith arrived. They changed all the locks in the house and garage. On Tuesday, I had an incredibly difficult time getting up and going to work. My accounting practice is seasonal and June isn't such a bad month. I didn't do much at work. What can I say? I felt like crap. Like I said, I've already hired a private investigator. On Wednesday afternoon, he called me and we agreed to meet. I came and received the evidence I needed, and in color. He asked if I wanted to continue observing. I said another 2 weeks if he could. I had a reason to continue even though I had everything I needed to know. It was clear that I was not suitable for her, so I knew she didn't want me. Not more. She called that Friday night, just as I was getting ready to leave work. She said that she had some free time and wanted to meet me at home. She said she could come home and take care of me. I told her, no, everything is fine with me. I went to a place called Joe's Place. Not quite sure whether Susan will come home or not. I really didn't want to be there. I went to the bar knowing that there was usually a fight every week or two. I was somewhat hoping that I would be drawn into one of them. Bad luck. The closest thing that happened was some guy kicked his girlfriend out, and they had a fight there. I must say I was disappointed. I finished my beer, went out to the car, and heard some sobbing. The woman who was thrown out sat in the parking lot with tears in her eyes. Need I say what happened next? Of course I let her in. I told her she could stay in my daughter's old room as long as she needed. Her name was Maria. She was several years younger than me. I thought, damn, at least I have someone to talk to. I drank a lot more on Friday than I thought I would. I knew this because I woke up very late and my head felt like it was floating. I heard noises in the kitchen that caught my attention. I walked in and saw Maria preparing breakfast. It was Saturday, my sleep day. I didn't get up until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What the hell, I thought. Even Susan knew better than trying to wake me up so early on a Saturday. I went into the kitchen and Maria handed me a plate of food. Soft boiled eggs, toast, potatoes, and sausage. I haven't had a breakfast like this in years. I smiled at the cook and said, "Thank you." Then I went to the table to eat. "Are you going to eat anything?" I asked. She smiled, handed me a cup of freshly brewed coffee and said, "I never eat breakfast, but I know what you eat, so everything is fine." I looked at her carefully for the first time. She was too thin. She was, at best, 5'2" and maybe 102 pounds. She didn't have a big bust or even a noticeable butt, but it was still easy to understand that she was a real woman. She was wearing ripped, baggy jeans and a baggy t-shirt that had seen better days. I think I would throw away such rags rather than wash my car with them. Looking closer, I saw high cheekbones and the most beautiful blue eyes I had ever seen. But that wasn't her best feature, her lips. No one can imagine how much I wanted to taste them, not to mention having them slide all over my body, and especially, oh, I got carried away. We must remember that I am a married man, and this is becoming increasingly difficult, knowing that my wife sleeps with anyone she can. Russ, Maria looked at me with complete seriousness. The front yard lawn needs to be mowed, trimmed, and trimmed. If you do that, I can start cleaning the house. I'll start with the kitchen and living areas, but I need to clean the whole house. So if there's something you don't want me to see, you better hide it. She was right. I've put all the yard work and everything else on hold since Susan started talking about leaving. I looked at her. "You know I'm married, right?" I asked. "Yes, and I know your wife has anyone who gets in her way with her best friend right now." I was shocked. How the hell did she know this? So I had to ask, "That's all you were talking about when we got home last night?" To be honest, I thought you were saying this to try to get into my pants, but I realized you were telling the truth this morning. I was surprised at myself. I've only passed out a few times while drinking. I must have done this last night too. I swallowed and asked, "I didn't do anything offensive or inappropriate, did I?" "No, you were the perfect gentleman. That's part of why I knew you weren't lying." Thank God, I thought. Yes, thank God. Okay, thanks. I don't really remember much after we left the bar. But I never drive drunk. How did we get home? I asked, puzzled. I was driving your pickup home. You showed the way. I'm so glad you took the keys from me. Thank God, at least for this. I speak. But did I really tell you about what Susan is doing now? Yes, yes. Well, I know it bothered you a lot, so I somehow got it out of you. Maria added. I've always been a person who kept everything to myself, so after hearing what I said last night, I thought maybe I should stop drinking or something. I mowed the lawn, trimmed it, and trimmed it. Came home sweaty, tired, and ready to get clean. Forgetting about Maria, I went into the large bathroom, undressing as I went, and straight into the shower. I rinsed off, enjoying the hot water flowing over my body. Then I went out and started drying myself. Dinner in the oven. A pleasant female voice said very close. Startled, I looked around and saw Maria in the bath. She just sat there as if nothing had happened. I was shocked. It was surreal to look at her until Chuck Jr. started to notice that her breasts weren't that small. They may have only been a cup's, but trust me, they were in great shape. Damn, I thought, but it was too late to say or do anything. I turned around, started drying myself off, and asked, "What's for dinner?" She actually laughed. Then she came out of the bath and walked towards me, taking my towel. Then she started drying herself with my towel. We had a nice dinner, and I was pleasantly surprised that she liked to cook. We both participated in washing the dishes. After dinner, Susan called me and asked me again if I would like her to come and take care of me. I told her again, no, thank you. But I promised that I would continue to take care of you. Everything is fine. I'm fine. Thank you. On Sunday, Maria put the house in order like he had never seen before. He was beaming. For all her housework, on Saturday evening, I took her shopping at Tanger Outlet Center and told her not to be shy. It took quite a lot of encouragement for her to do it. However, I managed to buy her some nice things. I didn't spend a fortune, but her clothes were terrible, to say the least. Besides, she earned it by cooking and cleaning. I started to wonder why her boyfriend kicked her out, but I really didn't want to ask. Later that day, I gave Maria the keys to my pickup truck and let her go grocery shopping. I was reading one of the stories about a loving wife on a website and somehow became self-pitying, wondering why I have a bitch that needs more. I heard some noise at the front door. I thought it was Maria, so I went to help her bring in the groceries. But it was my estranged wife, Susan. I opened the door for her, and she looked at me with confusion. "My key doesn't work," she said, a little stunned. "I know. I changed the locks." I said very directly. "What do you need?" I asked very sternly. I thought maybe I should come in and take care of my husband, the only man I love, and about the man with whom I will spend the rest of my life. She said, trying to give me a lustful smile. "I'm really not in the mood, Susan." "Come on, Russ. I know you don't like to go more than a day or two without sex. I'm more than willing to take you to our room." I shook my head and just walked into the kitchen. I took out the beer and opened it. One of the things about Susan is that she hates it when I drink, especially beer. She followed me inside and didn't notice that I had opened a beer. When I turned around, I saw how mesmerized she was by how clean the house was. I could see she was very disappointed with how good everything looked. "Russ, what's going on?" she asked. "Let's watch." What's happening is that my wife is ruining our marriage by having sex with everyone she can. Because I'm not right for her. My wife tastes what it means to be easily available and spreads her legs for anyone who wants her. This is all. She looked at me. "What's going on in the house, Russ? Something has changed. None of your business, Susan. You live with Katie and sleep with other men. While you're doing this, what happens in this house is absolutely none of your fucking business." I was as cold as I could be. She came up and tried to hug me, but I pushed her away. "Are you coming home today?" I asked. "Oh dear, no. I just came by to take care of you and let you know that I'll be home soon. Perhaps in a month or two. I wanted you to know that I'm fine and safe. I didn't want to tell her that I was getting updates every week on how she was doing. Well, okay, I see that everything is fine with you. Is there anything else I can do for you? She hugged me and tried to kiss me, but I held her back. Listen, Susan, I don't know where your mouth has been, and I don't want to take second or third parties. In other words, I don't want to touch you. Let me know when this is all over, and we can talk about our marriage. Russ, you've never gone more than a week without having sex with me. Now I'm getting by. Just get out and do what you have to do. I demanded this already with rage. I turned and walked into the master bedroom. I was glad she didn't follow me. I slammed the door hard and locked it in case she tried to come in. Maria returned home shortly after Susan left. She realized something was wrong because I grabbed the grocery bags and intentionally overloaded myself. Finally, I told her what happened. I feel so disappointed, Maria. She doesn't understand what she's doing to me. Just looking at her makes me eat my own heart. What should I do? I couldn't believe what she said. Many hypocrites who consider themselves righteous will tell you to divorce her and let her go to hell. She looked at me with that same sympathetic smile. But the thing is, you still loved her, didn't you? I could only nod. She hugged me and said, I won't tell anyone, but you still love her, and you can't stop until this is over. But the good news is that I'm here to be your friend. I can listen, I can hug, I can even quarrel with you. But I won't give you advice or tell you what to do. I sat in her arms, wondering why that idiot threw her out. Monday morning, I woke up feeling a little better. I took Maria to work. It turned out that she was a nurse. She got better and better. After I dropped her off, I went to work. I did as much as I could, which was almost a full day's work. This surprised even me. At 5:15, my cell phone rang. Hello, I said. Hi, this is Maria. Are you going to pick me up, or should I take a taxi? Oh yes, I can pick you up from work, no problem. Approximately what time? At 3 o'clock. No, it's already past 5. Oh damn, I'm so sorry, I'm on my way. Sorry, time got away from me. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I heard Maria laughing on the other end of the phone. It's okay, honey. I'll wait outside where you dropped me off. I drove as fast as legally possible. She finishes work at 3, and I left her 2 hours longer than necessary. I couldn't believe how good of a mood she was when I pulled up next to her and opened the door. I loved seeing her surprised face every time I acted like a gentleman. It makes my day seeing her a little dazed. I tried to apologize endlessly as I continued driving towards the house. Suddenly, I realized that I could make amends to her. She once mentioned that her favorite place to eat was Landry's Seafood House. Unfortunately, it is located in another city, but there is a place called Pier 51. Their food makes Landry's look like fish in a McDonald's sandwich. I turned onto Highway 51. I saw her giving me strange looks. I tried to avoid eye contact until I parked in the Pier 51 parking lot. I got out and ran around the pickup to open the door for her. We were both in work clothes, but I didn't care. I knew the owner and helped him save a ton of money on taxes over the last 5 years. We were shown to a very nice seat, and I pulled out a chair for Maria. Once again, I watched her become embarrassed by my actions. Then I sat down next to her. Maria was amazed at how good the seafood was here. She ordered shrimp Landry. This is one of their signature dishes. I ordered 2 dozen oysters, one on the half shell and the other grilled. You know that oysters are an aphrodisiac. Are you trying to do something? Maria asked with a lustful smile. I was shocked. I never thought about it. I'm still married even though my slutty wife does what she thinks is necessary. I hesitated for a moment until Maria said, I'm kidding. Russ, really, I'm just kidding. Okay, now I'm starting to feel better. We had finished our dinner when 2 people I recognized entered the restaurant. Actually, 2 that I knew. Maria saw all the color leave my face. She also saw my mood change from high and cheerful to dead. The head waiter escorted my wife and her companion, who was a very good client of mine. Not anymore. I swear to God he knew I was married to Susan. Now there is no chance that I will ever do his taxes again. They were seated 2 tables away from us. Susan didn't notice us at first. I signaled to our waiter that I wanted the bill. She came over and asked if I wanted dessert or takeout containers. I told her, "No, just the bill." I said it angrily. "Mr. Benson," she said too loudly, "your dinner is at the expense of the establishment. There will be no billing." I smiled, but noticed that my wife had noticed me. Damn waitress, I don't think she did it on purpose. Damn it. Frustrated and wanting to leave a good tip, I took 2 $20 bills out of my pocket and left them on the table. I stood up and tried to ignore my wife and her companion. My heart was breaking as I stood up. "Russ, dear, I didn't expect." She suddenly fell silent when she saw Maria. She suddenly became defensive and began to challenge Maria. To my surprise, Maria walked up to me, took my hand and hugged me tightly, smiling brightly and leaning towards me as if we had been close for weeks. Suddenly, Susan turned pale and Maria pulled me to quickly get me away from them. Susan didn't follow us. She didn't even call me. I think she just thought she could do whatever she wanted and I would just sit at home and suffer. Well, to hell with it. I woke up to a loud knock on my front door. I put on my robe and went to the door. He opened it and Susan entered. A man followed her. This was not the same man who was in the restaurant last night. But honestly, it didn't matter. As soon as he started to enter the house, I raised my hand and sharply pushed him back. He almost fell. "If you set foot in this house again, you will be carried out on a stretcher," I stated very firmly. Susan countered, putting her hands on her hips. "You have some kind of girl in you here, so I should also have the right to bring men into my house. In fact, this is not her home. I had a large inheritance, and I bought it before we started dating. You left our marriage and this house, Susan. You left all your ownership rights, and I don't sleep with anyone. Do you remember 24 years ago in March? I vowed to be loyal only to you, abandoning all others. Oh, how stupid of me. Of course you don't remember this, because you're the one who sleeps with everyone." I really hurt her with this statement. But she quickly regained her courage. "Then who is that bitch you were with yesterday?" "She's a friend who's having a hard time right now. She's temporarily living in Lori's room." Susan looked at Lori's door and saw Maria standing in the doorway. At that moment, Susan's lover stood up and was about to challenge me. I walked over to the wall and took off my Klingon bat'leth. Luckily, he retreated, going to his car or somewhere else. I heard him say, "I'll wait in the car." Clever man, I thought. Then he returned to Susan. She said, "Listen, I told you what I was doing, and I said I would continue to take care of you. It was you who rejected everything. But I want this girl out of my house now." I looked at Susan. "This is not your home anymore, Susan. Understand that. You left this house and our marriage." I explained everything. "It's only for a couple of weeks, maybe a month or 2. Or a year, or 10. Listen, Susan, you left our home with the full intention of destroying our marital vows. This is not your home anymore. Get out." I watched as Susan turned pale, hoping she realized what she had done. Susan stood silently for a long time and then began to cry. I shook my head and said again, "Go home, Susan." She turned and left. I closed the door and locked it, then fell to my knees, leaning against the door. Damn it, I still loved her. After a while, I felt Maria hug me, trying to comfort me. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone that you still love your wife, Russ," she whispered softly in my ear. I went to work and called my lawyer. I asked him to start the process. He had already prepared everything and was waiting for my permission. She was given the documents the following Friday, and I took the day off with Maria. We went to my friend's lake house. I locked the house properly. We spent a week packing all of Susan's things. I put her things in a container near where she lived. I left my cell phone at home, and there were no phones at the lake house either. Fortunately, Maria was able to take 3 days off. So, well, We settled into a quiet lake house. I brought my luggage. Although the kitchen was fully stocked, since this is my friend's house, we still decided to dine out. The first evening, I took her to an Italian restaurant. We had a good time. I asked the waitress if there was a weekend dance nearby. She pointed to the place, and we headed there after dinner. I liked their country music. There wasn't a single rock and roll song on the jukebox. Maria and I danced, flirted, and touched each other. I took her hand, led her to the dance floor, and felt goosebumps run down my arm. It was already late when we returned to the lake house. I sat on the sofa and waited until she left. I think of the lady's room. She came back to me with a drink in her hand. I smiled, took the drink, and patted the couch next to me. She sat down and pressed herself close to me. She felt very different from Susan when I hugged her, placing my hand on her stomach. I couldn't put off the question any longer. "Maria, I need to know," I asked very quietly. "Why were you kicked out the night I found you?" I heard her swallow. "You know I'm a nurse, right?" she asked. "Yes." "Well, I'm a nurse practitioner and I can write prescriptions." "Fine." Doug demanded that I write him a prescription for painkillers. I refused. It would cost me my license. But he didn't understand this. I wasn't with him long, and I think he thought he could break me and make me do it. But I just couldn't. Crap. I thought there was nothing wrong with this woman. Then a song started playing in my head. It's sad to belong to someone else when the right one comes along. Damn, what should I do now? In the end, we didn't do anything. Long drive, walk around the lake, games and fun. We were both very tired and fell asleep in each other's arms on the sofa. I woke up alone on the couch. I really felt empty until I heard Maria bustling around in the kitchen. I began to wonder what she was up to. She always made me breakfast every morning, but we agreed that we would only eat out. I got up and went to the kitchen, where I was immediately handed a cup of hot coffee and a sausage sandwich. She smiled at me with her lips, which I so wanted to try and do other things with them. I took the sandwich and noticed her look down. I saw her face freeze when she noticed the tent in my pants. Embarrassed, I quickly turned around and stuffed the sandwich in my mouth, spitting it out instantly. Oh, damn, he was hot. So now I've completely made a fool of myself, and the day is ruined. So what? As I sat eating my sandwich, I noticed she was wearing an old pair of jeans and one of my t-shirts. I could hardly contain my laughter because she looked like an 11-year-old girl in that outfit. I mentioned she had a cups, but she was so cute. "We need you to be ready as soon as possible. I saw a lot of fish jumping on the lake, and I'm hungry for fish for dinner," she said with a smile. Now I love fishing. I haven't gone fishing in a while because Susan hated fishing. She hated the smell of fish, she hated fish, and she even hated the thought of fish. I've gone on secret fishing trips a few times in our marriage and caught a few. Susan demanded that I not bring any fish home and that I wash all my clothes before returning home. This somehow ruined my entire fishing trip. Now Maria drags me to the lake to fish. Yes, I can do it. A friend of mine has a small 16-foot aluminum boat with a 25-horsepower motor. We started the engine and drove to where the fishing looked good. "Wow," Maria shouted excitedly when she caught a 2-pound spruce. "Great job," I said, encouraged, as she lifted the fish into the boat. I expected that I would have to unhook it, but she managed on her own and put it in our live tank. I went back to fishing, but just a few seconds later the sound came again. I turned, a little annoyed, to see her pull out a second trout, slightly smaller than the first. She put it back in the fish tank and cast the fishing rod again. "Wow," she shouted again. I turned to see her dragging another good fish into the boat again. "Catch one more fish in front of me, and you will go swimming," I said very sternly. "If you throw me out of the boat, I'll make sure you come with me," she threatens. "Oh, just catch one more fish in front of me, and we'll see who gets wet," I said, and then felt a tug on my fishing rod. "Yes, now it's my turn," I said very loudly as I pulled out the fish. When I lifted her out of the water, I looked at her in disbelief. She was, at best, 5 inches long and maybe 0.25 pounds. You really need to let this one go back. She laughed. I started laughing too. It was so funny that a woman caught me. I couldn't help but keep laughing for the first time since Susan told me about her plans to fuck other men. We brought 4 fish for dinner that night. I managed to catch one, and yes, we released the little one. Maria cooked them, and we had a feast, which meant we didn't go out to eat all day. We didn't go dancing. I turned on the music in the house, pulled her to me, and started dancing. We were still dressed in the same clothes. They smelled a little fishy, but we both didn't care. As we danced in the living room of my friend's lake house, I leaned over and did what I've wanted to do since I saw those beautiful lips. I covered them with my lips. They were soft and a little moist. I felt her hugging me and squeezing me tightly. I hugged her back to feel more of her body. She felt great, and her taste was beyond my imagination. Suddenly, she pushed me away and said, "I'm sorry, but you're still married. You still love your wife. I cannot do it." Then she rushed into one of the rooms. My heart sank. I fell asleep on the sofa again. It wasn't that I didn't want to go to bed. It was that I was too busy wallowing in self-pity to get up and go to bed. I felt her sit down next to me on the sofa. She leaned over and kissed me on the lips. I kissed her back, but wondered why she was doing this. "Good morning, breakfast is ready," she said and kissed me again. Then she got up and went to the kitchen. I stretched and got up from the couch. I went to the kitchen where I was handed a cup of coffee. Then I saw 2 pancakes on the plate. After breakfast, we took a walk around the lake before heading home. Neither of us mentioned last night. I was stunned when Maria moved to the front seat and leaned on me. She felt very good, but like she said, I'm still married, and I'm embarrassed to admit, but I still love my wife. When we got home, I unloaded the pickup. Maria helped bring everything into the house, and for the first time in my life, the fish was put in the refrigerator. I smiled at this small victory. I looked at the answering machine. I pressed play, and the messages started saying, "Russ, where are you? Why did you file for divorce? I need to talk to you. Call me back as soon as you receive this message." The messages went on and on. The entire feed was filled. Then I took my mobile phone and found the same thing there. I listened to several text messages and voicemails. Finally, I just started deleting them. Maria looked at me with a worried expression on her face as I listened to the messages. About an hour, maybe 2, after we had everything set up, the phone rang. I replied, "Hello. Where the hell have you been? What the hell are you doing? You can't divorce me just because I wanted to have some fun for a few days." Susan. First of all, it's called adultery, not fun. Secondly, almost 2 months have passed, not just a few days. And finally, you know that I can't make you happy anymore. Sign the papers, Susan. Let's part as friends, and you'll find someone you'll love so much you won't need anything else. I wish you luck, and I know you will find it. I hung up, but I still felt pain. 24 years down the drain. Maria helped me get through the night. Again, she didn't give me advice. She never told me what I was doing was right or wrong. She was just comforting me. The next morning, Susan drove up to our house. She came out carrying her suitcases. "Darling, I decided to return home today. Let's work on our marriage." With great difficulty, I stopped her and did not allow her to enter the house. "Susan, it's over. We're done. I cannot do it. As I said on the phone, sign the papers and find happiness somewhere else. I gave you half of our savings and..." I pulled out an envelope. "I packed and placed your things in a storage container near Katie's house." I handed her an envelope with a key and a container rental contract. I paid for 6 months in advance. Susan was stunned. She didn't know what to do. She tried to burst into tears, but her crying didn't touch me anymore. I didn't let her into the house. I helped her carry her things back into the car. After almost 2 hours of her trying to beg me not to do this, she finally left. I walked into the house, my heart hurting more than ever before. I thought that Maria would try to console me again. He hoped she wouldn't do it because he didn't want any comfort. I needed this pain, and I knew it. I went to the study, one of the bedrooms that I had turned into a den or home office. I opened the files I had only glanced at earlier from the private investigator. I began to carefully study all the photographs of the men she kissed and more. How he installed the camera in the bedroom, I don't know, but he was good. I looked at pictures of my wife with several men. I knew some of them. Some of them were my clients. I swear to God they won't do it again. Most of them were also married. The next day I called the detective and asked if he could identify some of the men I didn't know. He said, "No problem." I received all their names and addresses within 3 days. I created a letter on letterhead notifying their wives that their husbands had slept with a woman infected with herpes. I even sent pictures of their husbands with her. In the end, I only sent 8 emails. Surprisingly, in almost 2 months, she slept with only 8 different men. I delayed sending letters. But God, how I looked at them. I sent letters to all these jackasses who were my clients telling them that they needed to find another firm to do their bookkeeping and taxes. I had a client list of over 1,000 people. Losing a few wouldn't hurt me. Several of them called my office and begged me to reconsider the decision, but I very unfriendly told them to fuck off and die. I wasn't very kind. I had them all in my office, and I had several pictures of my wife all over the office. There is no doubt that they all knew that she was married to me. Maria and I started having fun in the evenings. Nothing too sexy, but we danced. Sometimes in clubs, sometimes at home, sometimes with friends. It didn't matter anymore. Time passed, and I received a letter from my lawyer. I opened it and found my divorce decree. This hit me hard. I felt like I was drowning in the living room on my knees. How can you erase 24 years? I thought they had happy years. Susan and I did a lot of the same things I did with Maria. We spent a lot of time together and went on vacation. I wasn't good enough in bed for her. Or was it something else? Maria found me and hugged me, as she did every time something like this happened. But I don't want to drag her down with me. I pick up the letters and hold them in front of her. I'm single now, so you'll have to find another excuse. Maria looks at me strangely for a moment, and then sees my longing gaze and smile. Her eyes widen for just a second, and then she grabs my hand and pulls me into my bedroom. I was more than ready. As soon as we were in the room, she began to undress. I followed her lead and found myself naked and completely aroused in a matter of moments. She pushed me onto the bed, came up to me, and started kissing me passionately. Then we started laughing. We laughed so hard that tears started flowing. But none of us could understand what we were laughing at. We were simply filled with joy. After we calmed down, we showered together. I started to get to know her little body a lot better. Even with her cups and small butt, she was a real woman. Lori refused to talk to her mother. She even blocked her numbers. I begged her not to do this. She's still your mom, and she never stopped loving you when you were bad. But she still didn't listen to me. I knew that one day she would regret it, but Susan moved out of Katie's house shortly after the divorce papers were signed. It seems they stopped getting along. I don't know all the details, and frankly, I don't care. Susan moved in with one of the men she had sex with. I later found out that he wanted a girlfriend to entertain his friends. Susan was definitely suited for the role. Maria and I started dating and were very happy. Lori even liked Maria. I still remember how nervous I was when they first met. Lori walked right up to Maria and said, "I thought you would only date women with breasts," referring to Maria's small breast size. I was shocked that Maria laughed. She dated Susan and saw her DD breasts, and my daughter Lori was equally well endowed by nature. When Maria laughed, Lori came over and hugged her, saying to my surprise, "I'm so glad Daddy has you now." Maria replied, "I am the one who is lucky. I'm so glad I have him." Then Lori kissed her on the cheek, leaving me in complete amazement. By the way, I wasn't the one who told Lori about her mother's wishes. Her mother did it. Lori was furious, and if they had been face to face, I think it would have turned into a fight. Personally, I'm glad that didn't happen. Lori hasn't spoken to her mother since she found out about her vacation. Susan's mother nearly suffered a stroke when she found out. She directly cursed Susan and slapped her in the face a couple of times. Now, it was my fault for telling her mother. I confess. She called about a week after Susan left me, and I had a lot of pent-up anger that needed to be released. I started to notice something. About 2 to 8 times a day, a very nice brown Honda Civic would drive by the house. She always drove from the top of the hill and slowed almost to a stop as she passed. I don't know why every time I saw her my heart sank. I had been divorced for 5 months, sleeping in Maria's bed. And then I heard a loud knock on the front door. I grabbed the bat and walked to the door. Looking out the window, I saw a man I had never seen before. I wish I had a gun instead of a bat. I reluctantly opened the door, ready for a fight. Thank God, thank God. These were the first words from his mouth. "Hey, do you know Susan Brown?" he asked. "What with her?" I asked, not wanting to say too much. "My name is Hank. I'm an Uber driver. I picked her up, and she was badly hurt. I tried to take her to the hospital, but she refused and asked to be brought here. She knew you would help her." I turned and looked at Maria. She stood at the door of our room. After a short, silent conversation, she quietly said, "Bring her here. Let's see what we can do." I followed the Uber driver who led me to the car. He opened the door, and the light in the cabin illuminated it for the first time. "Oh my God, she needs to go to the hospital." I screamed, ready to jump and take her there myself. "No, no, no," Susan screamed from her swollen mouth. I looked at her carefully. She was badly beaten. I knelt down and touched her gently. "You need to go to the hospital, Susan." I saw the pain on her face as she shook her head and whispered, "No, please no." I looked back at the house. Maria stood there, looking at me with a worried expression on her face. I raised my arms and shoulders in a gesture. "I have to, forgive me." Maria called quietly, "Bring her, we'll see what we can do." I lifted her out of the car. After playing with my little 102 pounds Maria for months, lifting 165 pounds Susan was a little difficult. But I managed, lifting her onto my shoulders and carrying her like a fireman. I carried her into the house and saw Maria standing in front of the door of my daughter's room. I carried her inside with a small smile of relief. I put her on the bed and let Maria examine her. At first, Maria insisted on calling an ambulance, but that soon passed when Susan begged to just let me treat her. Even though her lips and face were very swollen, her voice was quite strong. Maria called her doctor friend and told him what had happened. He arrived very quickly and began to provide assistance. He asked me to bring the car, which, according to him, was worth more than a dozen houses. I was very careful with her. As it turned out, his main concern was the concussion. There were no fractures in the skull. The portable X-ray machine I brought confirmed this. She was beaten, and there were no guarantees. He made me understand that if she died here, I might be accused of negligence or something else. He left, leaving the Roman 4 in her arm that Maria had started, and some medications. There were anti-inflammatory drugs, antibiotics, anti-everything, along with some steroids. Thank God Maria was here and knew how to handle the medications. The first night I didn't sleep. She had to remain conscious all night for some reason. It was very difficult for me to keep her in conversation, but I found a way by starting to talk about all the men she slept with when she left me. She became very irritable about this and stayed awake. But it suddenly became very therapeutic, and we began to gradually let go of the terrible hatred each of us felt towards the other. I hated her for breaking our vows. She hated me for ending our marriage. I found out that several of her lovers cursed at her when I refused to do their taxes. She told me she never thought I would do this. In her madness, perhaps she had a point. After I sent letters to all her lovers and their wives, most of them stopped seeing her. Then Katie started kicking her out, since I did the same to most of her lovers too. Susan moved in with a guy who wanted her to sleep with his friends. A month or two later, he brought a couple of black men, and she wasn't in the mood for it. Then he started beating her. The other two men joined him and, after beating and taking advantage of her, threw her into the street. She didn't want to go to the hospital. That's why I came here. This was the only place she could go. At about 6 in the morning, Maria took it upon herself to check her vital signs, pupils, and reflexes, and I fell asleep. We both took a week off to try to improve Susan's condition. She started to recover around the second day. We let her sleep, and Maria and I went to bed and made love in our room. My ex-wife was on the same floor and probably heard us too. After what she did to me, I still cared. Crap. The doctor continued to supply us with her medications and came every day. Maria took time off work to care for Susan. Between me and Maria, she had 24-hour care. I understood why the doctor was so willing to come into the house. I was going to the store and, having forgotten my wallet, did not go out the door. Having closed it, I returned to the kitchen and saw Maria kissing the doctor. This was not a friendly kiss. With the way his hands were on her, I knew they had been together for a while. Maria was not only practicing medicine at work. Well, this confirms everything. I'm not man enough to hold the woman. I watched them whisper to each other, Maria smiling and obviously flirting with him. All the pain I felt when my wife left came back, and I felt my heart clench so hard that I let out a small groan. Maria turned and saw me with a surprised expression, which I only noticed for a split second before I stormed out of the house. I got a motel room and called work. I told them I wouldn't be able to come for a few days, maybe a week or two. They asked me, why? I told them, none of your fucking business. I sat and drank until I went into complete oblivion for the first few days. I knew Maria was too responsible to leave Susan, so I knew she would have proper care. But what about me? What should I do now? I contacted the doctor's secretary and began to find out the cost of the medical services he provided to my ex-wife. I started adding up the numbers because that's what I do. I then wrote him a very large certified check. In the destination column, I wrote, paid in full, with mine and Susan's names. I drove past the house several times, but Maria's car was always there. Not knowing what else to do, I asked a friend to go into the house and give Susan a burner phone. I needed to know how she was. I called the burner phone when I saw my friend leaving the house. Susan felt much better. She told me that Maria wanted to talk to me. I told her I didn't want to talk to her. She told me that Maria had a reason for what I was seeing and that I really needed to listen to her. I tried to say that I was married to a bitch for over 24 years and that I was not man enough to satisfy her. I'm not going to start a relationship with another woman that I can't provide for. Please talk to her, Russ. There is more than you know. Please, you owe it to yourself. I didn't know what to say or do. I just knew I couldn't survive another vacation. I lasted 3 days before returning to the house. To be honest, I was more worried about Susan than I was about Maria. I knocked on the door and waited. A nurse I had never seen before answered and let me in. "Are you here to see Susan?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. She introduced herself as Kim Blank, a nurse specializing in home care. I remained silent as she led me to Laurie's room. I walked in and saw Susan sitting on a chair reading a book. I was glad to see her on her feet, but she still looked like she'd gone 3 rounds with Mike Tyson. "You look better, I see," I said with a forced smile. She smiled back at me and said, "Where have you been? I've been looking for you everywhere." I sat on the bed and looked at my ex-wife. "I know," I replied, then smiled again. "How are you? I see that you have found a replacement for me," I said, pointing to the nurse who led me into the room. Susan shook her head and said, "No, she replaced Maria. I don't need night help anymore. I can move around quite well. The doctor said I was very lucky and that the steroids and anti-inflammatories prevented brain damage, so I survived without any neurological damage. I walk around the block twice a day. Want to go with me? Now it's time for my afternoon walk," she suggested. I wanted to ask about Maria, but I thought I could do it while we were walking. Susan took my hand as we walked around the block, mostly in silence. We had nothing to say, and all I could think about was asking about Maria. Knowing my thoughts after all these years together, Susan said, "She's back at work. She still comes by to check on me sometimes, but I think she's back with her fiancé." I looked at her, and there was no need to ask a question. Dr. Collins and she had been engaged for almost 3 years when they had a big argument and she kicked him out. She paused. That was before she met that creep who demanded drugs from her. Susan looked at me. Then she met you by chance. When she called her ex, who is one of the best trauma surgeons in the state, she did it for you. Because she said you still have feelings for me. Susan sighed before continuing. Maria told me that seeing her ex was very difficult because she still loved him. She knew that the argument was just a manifestation of pride and ego, but she also knew that she never stopped loving him. After you caught them together and left, she arranged all my home care, and her now fiancé, Dr. Collins, pays the bills. They renewed their engagement. She wants to wait a year before walking down the aisle. I thought Maria was too good to be true. Nothing good lingers in my life. I can't blame her for going back to him. Now she has a rich doctor, and I hope she finds happiness. I decided to find out the exact cost of the treatment and make sure I would pay them. I don't want to be beholden to anyone. The truth is that I had already started to fall in love with Maria and was planning to marry her myself. I'm just not good enough for anyone. I think I'm meant to be alone. I bought a ring but canceled it after I saw her kissing the doctor. I didn't deserve her. We returned home and I spent the night with Susan. I was still sleeping in the master bedroom while Susan stayed in Laurie's room. I got up early and made us breakfast and was surprised to see Susan come in and watch me cook. We ate together at the dinner table. About a week later, I took her to a pretty nice restaurant that she loved. Everything was going well until one of her former lovers came and sat with us uninvited and started talking to Susan, completely ignoring me. I'm not a weakling. I can hold my own in any fight, and I started to challenge him, but Susan said, "He's not worth it, honey. Let's just leave, he'll pay the bill." She took my hand and led me out. I was more humiliated than ever. My wife kept me from fighting and took control of the situation. Susan pulled me out of the restaurant, but I really wanted to ask this guy. On the way home, she said, "Sorry, Russ. I didn't know this would happen." I looked at her and saw her face full of sympathy. She left me, and now she finally understands the consequences. Just a few days later, we were shopping at the grocery store when two men approached us. Apparently, she was with them. I didn't recognize any of them from the photographs from the detective. I began to doubt his qualifications. I only stopped for a moment before I couldn't stand the men's gaze and walked towards the exit of the store. Susan caught up with me before I reached the halfway point. "Sorry, Russ. Please forgive me," she said, taking my hand. The next day, I was getting gas and buying something to drink at the store when I heard several men laughing. I looked up to see them turning away, but the laughter didn't stop. Then I realized that I could no longer live here. I can't go outside without seeing someone who fucked Susan. I guess they Sethi have been bugging me for a while now, but I only started noticing it recently. There were too many memories in the house for me to keep my sanity. So I asked Susan how much more medical care she needed. She said it was last week and it was Saturday. Susan lost her job. It turned out that one of the married men she slept with was the father of one of her students. I sent the photos to their wives, complaints were filed, and she was fired. She couldn't find a new job after being beaten so badly. Against my will, I told her what I was going to do and that she needed to find a place to stay. The first thing I did was put my accounting practice up for sale. She left quickly. Even though I fired a few clients, I still had a good business. Then I put the house up for sale. I bought a new pickup and van. I knew everything I needed to take with me would fit in the pickup. Although I lived in the house with Susan, we kept our distance from each other. We ate together, but that was it. Susan wasn't looking for work or trying to find housing. I asked her one day what she planned to do as the deal deadline was approaching very quickly. "I have plans," she said. I completed the sale of my home and business in the same week. I had 3 days to pack and be ready to leave after the deal. The new owners didn't like the terms, but when I told them I would keep all the furniture and my four-wheel drive Subaru, they stopped arguing. I packed my clothes and a few things I wanted to take with me. Everything in the house reminded me of better days with Susan and Maria too. I needed less than half a pickup truck to fit all my stuff, so I was ready to go. I was walking back into the house when Susan walked toward the pickup truck, carrying two huge bags. "Help is needed?" I asked in a friendly tone. "Yes, please," she replied. I took both bags and asked her, "Where should I put them?" "In the pickup with yours," she said, heading for the last two bags. I stood there confused, not understanding what she was up to. I placed the heavy bags on the sidewalk and lowered them to the ground. Susan returned with two smaller bags, walked to the back of the pickup, and tossed them inside. She then picked up one of the large bags and began placing it in the back of the pickup. "What are you doing?" I asked, still puzzled. "I'm getting ready to leave. What else should I do?" "Am I taking you somewhere or dropping you off?" I asked, pointing to her cute brown Honda Civic parked in the driveway. "Yes and no," she said, looking straight at me with an expression that said, "Let me explain this slowly so you understand. I'm going with you wherever you go. Now, I know that we will argue. You will call me names, very bad and rude names. You will express everything that has accumulated in you, and then you'll do it again. When we get to Texas, you'll start to feel relieved. Then you will call me names again. I may have to push you, but you will continue. You'll let it all out by the time we get to New Mexico. And then we will start talking. We will talk and talk. We will find a way to live together. And then we will start again, and I will be the wife you always deserved. I will love you the way you deserve. I will want you every day. And I will spend the rest of my life undoing how much I hurt you." Was it an apology? Was she really sorry? I did not know. But well. "So, will you open the door for me or leave me on the side of the road with nothing?" She left the decision up to me. It was my decision. I walked over to the passenger door and opened it for her. She sat down inside. We drove out of town, and I started screaming and saying everything that had accumulated. We crossed the state line, and I started cutting into her with my words, and she started crying. I wanted to stop, but she wouldn't let me. She kept getting everything out of me. We slept in separate beds in the same motel room. We stopped arguing every time we stopped. I only scolded her while driving. When we got to Texas, we stopped at an Al Sub's gas station to fill up. She went inside to pay for gas and buy something to eat if possible. Her face, streaked with tears, attracted many glances, but that did not stop her. She came out of Al Sub's with a package. There were 4 things in it. "What is this?" I asked. "Don't know, but the local men said it was the best," she replied. I didn't say anything until we were back on the track. Then I started again. "So, you just can't resist men, can you, you fucking bitch?" Susan took it in stride and pulled out one of the burritos she had bought. She put some sauce on it and handed it to me. "Here, try it, and I'll add more sauce," she said, ignoring my rude words. I took a bite and said, "Damn, this is delicious." I looked at her in surprise. She added some sauce and took a bite herself. "Damn, you're right, it's delicious." "How many did you buy?" I asked. "4. "Well, damn, we need more. Do you want to come back?" She laughed. And when she laughed, I realized that this was the first time in many years that I heard her laugh. I used to come home and joke with my wife. I used to think of ways to seduce her and please her. We used to go on dates and dance. We used to love being together. "When did I stop?" I asked. "Stopped what?" she asked again. "Make you laugh?" I asked. The silence lasted for several miles. We had just crossed the border into New Mexico when she finally answered. I don't know exactly when, but I know it was a long time before I started thinking about doing something stupid. But, she thought a few more miles, "I don't know if I've stopped trying to laugh around you, or maybe you just stopped trying. I don't know which came first. I just know that I missed the times when we laughed and played together." Then I realized that her predictions had come true. We just passed through Tucumcari, New Mexico. The 1,800-mile drive that started out as a slam started to become enjoyable when we reached Santa Rosa. We laughed at the name of the city, Moriarty. Who would want to live in a place with a name that sounds like a morgue? We laughed and laughed. She leaned on my right arm, holding on to me tightly as we drove through Sandia Pass, and I didn't want her to be anywhere else. I felt my heart begin to open to her again. But then finally I asked, "Why wasn't I enough for you? What's wrong with me?" Again there was a long silence. I was just about to turn onto I-25 South when she finally spoke. "It wasn't in you. It was in me." I listened to Katie over and over again, and I started to get so turned on by the thought that I couldn't bear the thought of not doing it. It became an obsession. Nothing else mattered except that. She continued, "I justified everything. Your feelings, our marriage. All. I can't believe how selfish I was. How frankly hateful I had become. I lost our daughter, and you for what? My sick little fantasy. You know Lori doesn't talk to me anymore. She doesn't even answer my calls. My mother rejected me. Thank God my father died before I lost my mind. I can't imagine what he would have thought." I took the exit to our hotel. She didn't say anything as I pulled into the parking lot. We checked in, and she took one of the keys and went up to our room. I took out my suitcases and loaded them onto the cart. We had several suitcases this time. We were going to stay here until I found a place to stay. I had a job planned, so this is not a problem, although the salary will be significantly lower than I am used to. I think we can handle it. Damn, did I just say we? I parked the pickup and then pushed the cart toward the elevator and pressed the button for the third floor. I got to our room and knocked on the door. Susan opened it, and I wheeled the cart and suitcases inside. We unloaded the cart, and I carried it back to the front of the hotel. I found a coffee pot and poured myself a cup, then made one for Susan too. I was in no hurry to go back upstairs. When I finally returned, I opened the door with the key and entered. Lying on the bed, spread out like a goddess, was my ex-wife, almost completely naked. She was wearing a translucent black night dress that hid nothing. She looked at me for a moment, then said, "I'll be your bad bitch, Russ. I want you to know that you can take me any time you want. I will never touch another man unless you tell me to. I'll be yours only, Russ. I'll never say no to you again." I stood looking at my wife with surprise on my face. "You've got to be kidding me," I said very quietly, almost in a whisper. "No, I am not joking. I'm yours, Russ. I don't want to make love. I want you to take me like a $2 bitch. Don't be gentle. Don't be delicate." Tears streamed down her face. "I lost you once, and I don't want to lose you again. Tell me what to do, and I will do it. I'll never say no to you again, Russ." I walked up to her, grabbed her by the hair, and pulled her towards me. She didn't hesitate. In fact, she never wavered in the 6+ years we lived in New Mexico. I told her several times that she didn't need to continue being my sex slave, but she refuses every time. I never asked her to sleep with another man. However, somehow I know that she would have done it if I had said so. There are a lot of things I didn't ask her to do. Lori is here with our 3 grandchildren. This is Rose, Kimberly, and Roy. Susan is a great-grandmother, too. Lori has not fully forgiven her mother, but now they are talking. We are celebrating what should have been our 40th anniversary, and you won't believe who came. Maria came with her doctor husband. They took a few lessons from us and were able to get through the tough times without the problems we had. It's easy to see how much Maria loves him, and they are happy. We went to the Albuquerque Air Festival. It was a beautiful event. We had fun. I work at Hook and Dollar Accounting, and we are doing pretty well. Surprisingly, Susan still does everything I ask in terms of sex. In more than 6 years, she never turned me down. I'm not asking her for anything too fancy, but we had wonderful moments in bed and in every room of our new home. I never stopped loving my wife Susan, no matter how much she hurt me. We don't have a perfect marriage, but we get along and laugh. We are so happy. Sometimes I think I won't be good enough for her again. That worries me. Every time Susan sees my fear, she assures me that the only way she will be with another man again is if I tell. I assure her that I will never do this. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to